Welcome back, students, to the next screencast. This one's about arithmetic sequences. We're going to set them up, and we're going to use them to solve the particular question. This real-world example I know is earth-shattering, life-pressing. It's about boxes of macaroni and cheese. Yes, a family bought 42 boxes of macaroni and cheese when it was on sale. Wow! It must have been on real sale, or they really, really like macaroni and cheese. The kids eat 3 boxes per week. Okay, so they do like macaroni and cheese a lot. Write sequence formulas for the number of boxes left at the beginning of week N. So N, that's not weekend, that's week N, the letter N, okay? So the week is represented by the letter N. All right, so we have to find the recursive formula and the explicit formula, and our sort of template for the explicit formula, don't forget, is a sub n is equal to a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times d. Remember, we just said n is the number of weeks. And you know what? It helps if we were to start by finding b sub 1. I'm going to use b for this particular for these particular recursive and explicit sequences and these formulas, because b stands for boxes, I guess, but you can choose, of course, any letter you wish for the question that I'll present to you in just a moment. And it also helps us to find d. Remember, d is the common difference. It's the number that you're adding to the previous term to get the next term. And to start us out for any of these problems, even if it doesn't ask you to, even though for this particular question it does, it helps to just write out a few terms in the sequence itself. So let's do just that. In other words, we're going to start with this question down here. Find the first 4 terms in the sequence. Now, of course, you can go beyond the first 4 terms, but the first 4 terms should, of course, be enough for us to go off of. So let's see here. Well, we know at week 1, in other words, when n is equal to 1, they have a full cupboard of 42 boxes of macaroni and cheese. Again, wow. You know, out of all the bad foods for you, I would have to say macaroni and cheese is the best, worst food for you. Anyways, back to this. 42 is at week 1. Then, of course, kids eat 3. So at week 2, it's 42 minus 3, which will give us 39. And then it goes down again. In the 3rd week, we have 36. And then after that, we have 33. So here are the first 4 terms. And, of course, it goes on and on. So dot, dot, dot. And the way we got that, quite simple. Every single time we went to the next term, we did not add 3. We, of course, subtracted 3. So based on just what we have written right here, we know b sub 1 and we know our common difference. Now, your common difference, of course, can be a negative number. Never feel that it can't. b sub 1 is the number 42 to indicate that we start with 42 boxes. And we seem to, yes, subtract 3 boxes every single time. So we subtract 3 from the previous term to get the next. But isn't subtracting 3 the exact same thing as adding negative 3? So our common difference is negative 3 because we keep going down by 3. So don't think the common difference has to be a positive number. Oh, no, no, no. It can be positive or negative. That's fine. In this case, because the sequence is going down, it happens to be a negative number. So there you go. Now that we have that, not only have we answered the first question, which asks us to find the first 4 terms in the sequence, we can now easily create the recursive, the explicit, and then finally find the number of boxes left at the beginning of week 12. And to do that, I want to use the explicit formula because, as we saw in class, this is the more user-friendly one if you are not a computer, which I don't think we are. No, okay, none of us are. Anyways, back to this. Let's do the recursive formula. Now, the recursive formula, remember, has at least 2 lines of information. And the first line is indicating what the first term is. So we already have that at the top. b sub 1 is equal to 42. Now the second line is how it generates all the rest of the terms in the sequence. And it's b sub n, remember n represents any week in the sequence, is going to be equal to, well, we have to state it in terms of the previous term. So if the current term is b sub n, then the previous term would be b sub n minus 1. Well, what are we doing with the previous term to get the next? We're not adding 3, we are in fact subtracting 3. So we take the previous term, whatever that might be, and subtract 3 from it. But don't forget that crazy little piece of information you also need to say. You need to say 4n is greater than or equal to 2 because this line of code, if you will, this information here will only work for when n is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and on and on and on. So you had to indicate that. Nice job. Let's find the explicit formula now. To find our explicit formula now, we're going to follow this excellent template right here, which is the general formula for any explicit arithmetic sequence. Now, we're not talking about any one, we're talking about a very specific one that has to do with these boxes of macaroni and cheese. So instead of a sub n and a sub 1, of course, remember I called it b because b stood for boxes, so b sub n is going to be equal to the first term, which we said was 42, few moments ago, and we're going to add to that n minus 1, and we're keeping n as n because remember this is going to generate for any term in the sequence. In other words, any week that we're talking about, the 12th week, the 30th week, the billionth week, if they like macaroni and cheese for that long. And then we're going to multiply it, of course, by d, which is, of course, our common difference. Now watch, I'm going to write negative 3. But remember, if you're writing your common difference and it's a negative, it really helps to put parentheses around it, because look at it as it is right now. The reader might think you're doing n minus 1 minus 3, which is not what we need to do. We need to multiply it by negative 3. So I'm going to put parentheses around it. Now it clearly indicates to any person reading that you're multiplying by negative 3. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your explicit formula. So we're going to use that one for this last part here, in which it says to find the number of boxes left at the beginning of week 12. To solve this last part, all we need to do is recognize that if we're finding the number of boxes left at the beginning of week 12, well, now we know, since n represents any number of week, we know n is equal to, of course, 12. So here it is again, our explicit formula. Now you could find this using the recursive formula, but that might take too long, especially if we're not looking for week 12. What if we're looking for week, number 30? We don't want to go back to 29, to 28, to 27. No. Use the explicit formula. It's a lot more user-friendly. So here we go. Instead of b sub n, it's b sub 12 to indicate the boxes in the 12th week, is equal to 42 plus, well, we just said 12 is n, so 12 minus 1, multiplied by negative 3. Now we have to do the math here, and so we know it's 42 plus 11 times negative 3. And so to finish this one off, what we need to do is recognize that 42 plus negative 33 is the exact same thing as 42 minus 33. And so after week 12, they of course have 9 boxes left. And so they probably need to make another trip to Walmart or Costco or any of those major food chains and buy another 42 boxes. Of course, I would hope after 12 weeks of eating non-stop continuous macaroni and cheese 3 times a week, you might move on to another food, perhaps something more healthy. I recommend oranges. Now, while arithmetic sequences are extremely important, especially in the ever controversial topic of boxes of macaroni and cheese, please understand it does have much more important real-world application as well. And here's the question that you need to solve. Airlines work on the assumption that passengers weigh on average of 190 pounds. Very interesting. They're assuming on average your typical flyer is going to weigh 190 pounds. A regional jet weighs 25,900 pounds with only one person, the pilot, aboard. It's a very good thing that they take into consideration that at least one person aboard that plane will be the pilot. Your task is to write recursive and explicit sequences for the weight of the aircraft with n people aboard. So n represents the number of people aboard. So n equal to 3 would be there's only 3 people aboard the plane. N equal to 150 means there's 150 people aboard. That you see where this is going. You're going to write a recursive formula and an explicit formula, and then do me the honor of answering the question by finding the weight of the plane fully loaded with a crew of 3 and 51 passengers. You can either use the recursive formula to do that or the explicit formula to do that. Again, hint, hint, the explicit formula will get you that answer a lot more quicker, user-friendlier, a lot more neater, okay? Just do me one favor. Instead of using A or B as the name of your sequence, do me a favor. Since this one is about an airline and we don't want to use A again, please use J, which will stand for jet. Okay, so you're going to do J sub n, J sub 1, such and such, on and on and on, okay? So that it is, folks. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.